In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Good evening. We are so glad to have you all with us again for another evening, another program of another day, the next day in our trip in Israel. Welcome, Ashley and Cindy. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Good. Let's see.
So we're still in New Mexico, Isla. Yesterday we had this trifecta of, we had the eclipse passed through right where our RV place was. We didn't even plan that. So we found out about it a week before. So the eclipse happened. Then we took a hike around ancient petroglyphs where ancient Indians had put their handprints all over these rocks. And from there we went to the balloon festival. So if I come off as a little overstimulated today, this is why.
Hey, that sounds like great times. Really good. So, Ashley, things going well?
Things are going well. I've been working on, I have a little online shop where I sell supplies to people who spin yarn, which I started about 20 years ago after reading Proverbs 31 and challenging myself to do what she did literally as for fun. So I've been working on a really big shop update that'll hit my shop November 1st, about 1,000 products, all getting bagged up and ready to sell.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She looks for woolen flax, Isla. She looks for woolen flax.
Very good. Very good. Well, we are glad that you took a little time out of your day so that you can join us. And we appreciate the time that you're taking to talk about these pictures. And it was so fun on our trip to see how well, the pictures you were taking. I could see you taking pictures, and I just was so excited on the trip, knowing what we were going to produce later on. So I'm just really pleased to be able to bring all of this to our viewers. Let me see if I can get the screen share up. Sometimes I'm a little technological.
Isla handling our producing and being on the program.
There you go.
Right.
Excellent. So let me get myself down to the bottom. Y'all are the start.
So this is day 3. Yep.
I wanted to go back because, when we did the program, I messed up and did not give you enough Hezekiah's tunnel. So I went back and I found some more. Y'all tell about it because we didn't go on this part.
So yeah, this is what from the Gihon Spring where the kings were anointed down into Hezekiah's tunnel where he built those waterways to prepare for the siege of Assyria. And you can see in this picture, it ranged from about mid-calf height most of the time, up to your knees a couple of times. And just wide enough to walk in. And all of the light you see in these pictures is from headlamps. So if you didn't have your headlamp on or you looked backwards and forwards, everything around you was really, really dark, except for where your headlamp was focused. So that was
and when y'all came out, some of the people, up to above their knees almost, some of the shorter people, their pants were wet up above their knees. So it was there was deep. We were glad we did not go on that part. And here you can see, I know you mentioned the other night that you could easily, to put your hands out. I can see how close it is here, Cindy. This is you. dressed so nicely.
Mhm.
And then at the end of it, here's Ashley. It came
Yeah.
out here for these stones.
They used to think that was the pool of Siloam, but then they found out in an excavation project that just maybe 20 paces down from there was the actual pool.
And when y'all came out, you walked out into the part that has been excavated, the pool of Siloam. Because I remember seeing y'all come out because we were from the other direction, from the other tunnel. So, and this is also a picture you took of Zach, our Israeli guide, at a moment of rest. He was busy the whole time, leading and guiding and talking. I just learned so much from him. It was such a pleasure to be on his tour. So I wanted to backtrack just a little bit. Yeah, he was really good. Just that little bit of backtrack so you could see those pictures from Hezekiah's tunnel. This day, though, we started out at the Nebi Samuel. Is that how we said it? The tomb of Samuel. The traditional burial place, but it's not likely he was buried there. But, it was a lot of the sites, don't you think, were traditional sites, remembered things. And Luke was very careful. Luke Chandler, our tour guide, was very careful to tell us what was real and, what was genuine archaeological and what was traditional and believed to be. So, and here at this place, there was a 12th century Crusader fortress had been built. And then in the 14th century, a mosque was built over that. And it was supposed, the tomb that they supposed was the tomb of Samuel is in an underground chamber. We went down there. We kept going down, down, down. The men had to go one door and the women went another door. And when we got down to the bottom, there was an area for Jewish men and for Jewish women to pray in that area. And that was very interesting to see the people so devoutly praying. But the church was something else too. And Ashley, you took these pictures of the church.
Yeah, this building was on top of a mountain in the city of Ramot, which is spelled R-A-M-O-T. That is Ramah in the Bible. And so Ramah and Gibeon are right next to each other. And I thought that was interesting. They're also listed next to each other in Joshua 18 in the cities of the tribe of Benjamin. So this is Benjamite territory and Samuel's hometown, but we don't know for sure if he was buried here.
Right. And we're looking out over this. One of the reasons we stopped here was we got such a great view of Gibeon from this area. So that was the next one in Joshua chapter 9. And when you're thinking about your history of, and I forgot to take, I have a duplicate after a while, y'all will notice it. The people of Gibeon fooled Joshua and the elders into making a treaty with them as though they had come from some long distance. It was interesting to stand here and you could almost see when Luke said, right over there, right around there, and you could almost see the area where the Israelites were then. I mean, it was not that far away. And I remember as a child and, before coming here thinking it must have been hundreds of miles for them not to know, but they didn't know people that were around the mountain. They didn't realize even that they were there.
North Island, it would be equivalent to the closest Dunkin' Donuts would be just about.
Yeah, one thing close, but they right.
One thing I love. Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Is from the church, you had such a panoramic view that you could see the Temple Mount on a clear day. You could just make out the Dome of the Rock way out in the distance. And so I think it's really cool that from this spot, you could see the temple.
Yeah, that is neat.
And this was a Crusader aged church building, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. And it had rained, and so some of Ashley's mud puddles or water that had collected in the rock, she was able to use to, I'm not sure if you painted this view or not, Ashley, but.
Yeah, I used water from the rain that morning. It was the third day, which in Jewish culture is the day of double blessing, because when God created the third day, he said it was very good. And so many Jews get married on the third day, and Jesus rose on the third day, and Jonah was in the belly of a whale for 3 days. And so there's a lot of significance and poetry in the Bible about 3 days. And I had thought for the year leading up to the tour, I said, you know what, if I ever go back after this tour, I want to go back in January, because that's the rainy season. And I'm from Oregon. I love the rain. I just think it adds a vibe. And I thought that it would kind of lessen the tourist feel. And so the fact that it rained on the third day, and Luke Chandler said he had no idea, like it was miraculous. It's not supposed to rain. It wasn't on the forecast. And I just cried all day long, because I was like, I can't believe it rained. I can't believe it rained on the third day. It rained.
And I had a number 3 moment. I had a moment there where I was speaking with one of John Weaver's daughters, and I reached down, because I like to do this thing all over the country. I do this on our travels as we're living nomadically. I will find an ironic piece of garbage that's small and portable that I'll take with me and put in a bag and like record, say why it's special. And so I reached down and I'm about to pick up something, and I say to John Weaver's daughter, what day of travel is this? And she goes, I think it's day 3. And I'm like, oh, how special. And it was this silver number 3 that was like a cutout of somebody had probably had a 2023 party or something up there. But yeah, so I brought something special home too from this little spot on day 3.
Day 3. That is great. That is great. It's so interesting on a tour like this, and you can see the members of our tour spread out. As Luke was talking to us, everybody gets something different. I mean, we have a different connection to the story in the Bible, to the happenings of the day and the place. It's so interesting. I'm sure if we were able to talk with everybody would have gotten something just a little bit different on that day, and it just makes travel so special. So again, Gibeon, and we zoomed in a little bit closer so you can see this was the hill where Gibeon, the town or the people of Gibeon were. Sorry, this is a repeat. So, as soon as the people of Gibeon made that treaty, then 5 kings around them realized that they had made this treaty, and then they were afraid, because now with Israel on one side and Gibeon on another side, then it was going to be hard to defeat the Israelites. So the king was able to get 5 kings, all the king of Jerusalem and 4 other kings and their armies together to fight. So they came to fight against Gibeon. Well, they had a treaty, so they sent for Joshua, and Joshua came to help them, to fight, to save them. That became the day, the day that the sun stood still, and so that they could continue to fight and to pursue and to kill their enemies. And so that was the scene here in Gibeon. We also know that while David was king, the tabernacle had been set up here at Gibeon, along with the altar of burnt offering, even though the ark was at another place. It was at Gibeon that God appeared to Solomon, where the altar and the tabernacle were, and where Solomon, God says, what would you like? And Solomon says, wisdom. And God said, I'll give you that plus, The ark was already in Jerusalem. Excuse me. but the altar and the tabernacle were here. And, that's things that you don't really realize, that this happened here, and then also this, and then also this. It's, I don't know, that was fascinating to me, because we're so used to, in America, I think one thing happens here, okay, now then another thing way over there. And it was just neat to me that things happened at the same places. Anything else before we leave Gibeon?
I'm reading in Joshua 9. It was at the end of 3 days after they had made a covenant with Gibeon, they realized that they were their neighbors. So
they said, well, it's right there, so. Next, we went on our tour to Kiriath, if I'm saying it right, Jearim. And this was where the ark had stayed in Abinadab's house after it had been in Philistine hands. It's during that battle when Eli's sons were killed, when Eli fell back and died. He was 98 years old. Shouldn't have been sitting up on something tall anyway, they would have said. But the ark had been taken by the Philistines. And then he was distraught because his sons had died, but also because the Philistines had gotten them. And 1 Samuel 4:22 always impressed me, where Phinehas's wife, Eli's son's wife, died in childbirth at that time, and it says, the glory is departed from Israel, for the ark of God is taken. And so they took it, remember, to Ashdod, to Dagon's temple. And it knocked Dagon down over and over. They took it to Gath. Oh, there's another city again. They took it to Ekron. Death and destruction followed it. And they finally, after 7 months, they caught on, and they said, let's load this thing up and get rid of it. And so they sent it out on a cart. And I always was impressed, as being from a farming background, that when a cow has calves, she doesn't go away from those calves, and those calves don't go away from them. But the Philistines said, we want to be sure this is that we should do now. And so they hooked up these 2 milk cows, kept their calves, and let them go to see where they would go. And they walked away from their calves. Very not usual. This is God's hand in this. And they went straight to Beth Shemesh, where they were reaping the wheat, it says. And curious people had to look into the ark and so forth. Then, so they asked the people of Kiriath Jearim to come and get it, because people keep it on getting killed. So here it was in the house of Abinadab for about 20 years, throughout the judgeship of Samuel and the reign of Saul. And then we know the story of how David finally brought it to Jerusalem. But the reaping of the wheat, I thought was neat, how you took the picture of the wheat fields. And this was oats, wasn't it, here?
Yeah, those were wild oats. I thought I was amused. There are wild oats growing in Israel. And I was impressed by how much of Israel was still used for agriculture after 6,000 years. There's no urban sprawl and no Walmart every 20 minutes down the road. It's still very much the way it was back when the Canaanites lived there.
Yeah. I think in a future day or so, I've got another picture of them reaping of the wheat, I think it is. Yeah, harvesting is what I was trying to say. This was an interesting picture, and so I put it in because I wanted you to explain it.
Yeah, before I went to Israel, I read everything I could. And so this appeared to be what I had seen in a book called The Crown of Thorns plant, which is a weed that grows all over Israel. And some speculate, since it's so prolific there and it has such long thorns, that when they made the crown of thorns for Jesus, it was probably made out of this plant.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to say if it was. It certainly would be less painful than what we've seen in different artistic renderings of the death of Christ. But yeah, hard to say. But yeah, I can see it's beautiful to have pictures of different plants that are unique to that area. And I recall, if wondering if you guys recall, this is the area where Samson grew up? Is that correct? And that they had in
I
Bethlehem.
think we get into it in just a little bit, I think.
This was going into Lachish. This I found
going into Lachish.
Right. We left here and we were heading toward Lachish, but of course we had to stop at the Elvis convenience store, which was, Luke said, this is a regular stop. We have to stop. It's Elvis, and, so we fooled around there and had some coffee and snacks before we got to Lachish. So Cindy, you wanted to talk some about that?
Well, yes. So at Lachish, we understood that we were told about how the Israelites had gone into idolatry, but that King Hezekiah had brought them back into restoration. But in the process of doing it, that they had used some of the high places in order to kind of desecrate them, that they had put toilets in there, that people would use what was once used as idolatrous worship, that they were using those as bathrooms. And it was at that point, because my mindset at Lachish was I was in grief with God over the unfaithfulness of Israel. And so I'm in a lot of prayer. I know Ashley was also in a very, very serious in her head about the history there. And, she was having her own private thoughts on it. I was having mine. And it was at this site that I decided, you know what? I'm glad that they used it for a toilet to desecrate the idolatry. And in a way, I wish I was there to participate in it. So this is like confession right here. I started waiting for everybody to leave so I could spit on any area that was used for idolatry. And in fact, if they showed us, here's where the ruling leaders would meet to make the decisions about how this, area was being, and so I would spit there too. And so that was how I sort of participated in history, hopefully when no one was looking. So I don't know, I found it very, it was a way of communing with God. And yeah, that wasn't the last time that happened. But anyway.
Yeah. Well,
that was one thing. That was
we hate what God hates, and God hates that idolatry. So that's right. Ashley, did you have a thought?
Just looking into Lachish in Micah 1 verse 13, it says, harness the steeds to the chariots, inhabitants of Lachish. It was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Zion, for in you were found the transgressions of Israel. And it tells them to repent. And so I found that day, the rain was incredible, but the sites that we went to were very dark. This was the opposite of the Temple Mount experience for me. It was a place of grieving and a place of idolatry and a place of where God's heart was broken over and over and over again. And so, I was way behind Luke. He had done a lot of digging there, so he knew a lot about, I have a pot handle from there that his daughter gave me. He had done a lot of work there and was really excited, but I was just kind of grieving and melancholic about the whole thing. Like this picture that you can see, this is a rebuilt. They took the pieces and they replastered them and rebuilt the area that would have been the high place where you would have sacrificed before entering and leaving the city. And the gates that are there are the same gates that Hezekiah that were there during his time. So it was like the edge of the knife between when, despite good people doing good, God's judgment needed to happen anyway.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, he showed us some of the gates, as you say, the original gates, and they had constructed it in such a way that if an army came up, they could not come up in mass. They just a few at a time. And then the way that they had to turn would make them vulnerable, which I thought was very interesting as well.
There's still a siege ramp that goes up the side that the Assyrian army built. That's still there from when they took the city down. And the picture you're seeing now, I thought was really beautiful. It was all the kings of Israel, and the heights of the chairs were based on the years of reigning of those kings.
Yeah, it was
the longer chairs were the higher the back, the longer the reign was, and they're all in order of the reign. And so you can kind of see in the background, there's where you can climb stairs and enter into the area where those kings would have ruled from on top of that vantage point at the highest point up there. And so I walked up there once everybody had left. Like Ashley, I was kind of straggling behind. I think Ashley had come and gone as well, if memory serves. And I was up there by myself, and I had this hat on. And all of a sudden, this huge gust of wind blew my hat off, and it started tumbling and rolling very, very quickly over the border that, where you're supposed to stay within that boundary as a traveler. So I'm jumping over the fence and chasing down my hat. And in the course of doing that, I didn't realize till an hour or two later that my hat band had fallen off. And so somewhere up on the top of Lake-ish, there's my hat band. So if anybody sees a brightly colored hat band on the top of Lake-ish, I kind of left a piece of myself behind there. It's kind of like in the old days, the woman would leave a hanky or something like that. So, that was something. Yeah. But I remember a drop of rain coming down while I'm up there all by myself, looking around, and I'm in prayer, I'm in worship, I'm in communion with God, and then boom, right on my cheek, right before that gust of wind hit, the rain hit my cheek. So that was my experience on Lake-ish.
Wonderful. Well, the next thing we did when we left there is we had lunch at a mall. When we left all this antiquities, all this to go to a modern mall. I think we ate at a Japanese or a Chinese place, and there was a McDonald's, and different ones ate at different places. And it was, the culture shock was a little bit much, how we go from one thing to another. We enjoyed
that. It takes so long to process what you need to process on these tours, because you're going from Lake-ish to modern day society to some other New Testament or Old Testament epic ground. There was a store there called Naaman that I was laughing at, because I was like, oh, I'm glad that after Naaman got cured of leprosy, he looks like he got into the shoe business. him.
Oh dear. Our next stop then was Beth Shemesh, where the ark came when the Philistines sent it back to Israel in 1 Samuel chapter 6. We stood up on this area. And this was the area Luke was telling us where Samson had grown up. It was astonishing. I don't know if the next picture doesn't show it. It was astonishing to stand and to see, okay, Samson grew up here. Now, just over there, that's Timnah, where he found the woman that he wanted to marry. And then they went across there, and that's where he killed the lion. And it's just right there. It just, I don't know, that part of it, the distance is, I think, is what really impressed me that it wasn't miles and miles and miles that you couldn't see, but you could see. It was just on over there. But where he went down into the valley and killed the lion in Judges chapter 14, and all of that was just fascinating to me to see those areas. Even though you can see in the distance, there's a lot of growth in terms of people living there and working and industrial development and so forth. But still, up on this mountain, it looks like basically, I'm sure it did way back in the way back. So.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what crops they were growing in that valley and if it's the same crops or similar today. You know, it's still agriculture.
Right.
I remember Luke, and I also remember Luke saying that about 10 or 11 years ago, the excavations had uncovered a seal that appears to show a human figure facing a lion-like creature. So some people wonder if maybe that's, you know, the local hero's exploits, he said. And so it's fascinating how there's evidences planted here and there that the stories we read about in the scriptures, they don't take place like in Narnia or, you know, human created locations. This is where these events happened, and really it confirms the Bible that all of these really did. These are really points in history.
Right, absolutely. We went on to Gath, the home of Goliath, and 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 4 identifies it. Now it's just a barren hill. 1 Chronicles 20, it was interesting to me while I was researching for this program that 1 Chronicles 20 tells about warriors who were descended from the giants in Gath. And it was neat. I just never had made that connection before. So much of touring like this and taking a trip like this puts those images, things you've seen, places you've been, where as you see them and read about them in scripture, it brings them even more closely to your heart, I think. But one of the things that we saw here was the flock. We saw the herdsman doing what herdsmen have done for thousands of years, hundreds of years. He had a flock, and this was sheep and goats, and they were together. It was interesting. I said as he walked off, the sheep were following, and the goats were still just, whatever. So he had to bring them to him. But we were, of course, all fascinated by the sheep and the goats. But there's the hill of Gath up there. Again, nothing much. And there wasn't anything then, I guess, for you to see either. Did y'all have anything?
A cave up there, I believe. I think there's a cave up there. And I remember something, Isla. I remember something one of our fellow travelers did while we were there. We didn't expect to see this flock and these goats. And there's the shepherd, and suddenly he's being watched by, almost 50 people. And he was probably expecting a quiet day or whatever. So I loved that one of our fellow travelers, she kind of holds out a bottle of cold water to him and kind of walks toward him with it. And I think she gifted him some kind of monetary little thank you along with that cup of cold water, and just the importance of kind of like doing little gestures of building rapport, with the locals, too, because you never know if they're excited to see you or like, oh, great, or what their emotion is. But I just thought that was very thoughtful, and something that maybe would be a good travel tip for others who stumble upon something beautiful like this unexpectedly.
Yeah, we certainly took lots and lots of pictures of him. So, from here, we also went to in more of the sheep and the goats. You see the goats in the distance by the trees over toward the left. They climbed up because goats are climbers, as it were. So We went to and saw the Valley of Elah, which was there close by. This is the scene of the contest between David and Goliath. The Philistines were on one mountain, the Israelites on the other. The valley was below them. And as Luke was telling the story, you could just see it, through your mind's eye, you could just really visualize. They were up there, and Goliath came out and taunting them. And then David went down into that Valley of Elah, got his stones and met Goliath. And 1 Samuel 17 really talks about this particular event in the story of the children of Israel. And here was another of the group as we were standing, as Luke would tell us the stories, the Bible accounts, and we were observing and seeing what he was saying. It was just a wonderful day of just connecting with the Bible accounts that we had heard in many cases all our lives, and that were so important to us. So then we also picked up hyssop, didn't you say, Ashley?
Yeah, that's a wild hyssop plant, which was important in the Bible. It was the plant used to paint the blood of the lamb on the lintel and doorposts of during the Passover. It was the plant that they used in the crucifixion. It was the plant that David asked to be cleansed with. And so it has a lot of cleansing properties in it. It's kind of like an antiseptic plant.
Yeah. And Zach told us about it and then passed it around as well on the bus. And of course, then we headed back home again. So let me see. I'm not very good with the stopping here. How am I doing? Did I make? Oh, it did stop. Very good. Okay. I got in darkness now, didn't I? So we've been recording this program.
Yeah.
I got more and more.
So hyssop, I might add about hyssop, Isla. As part of this, I have a collection of scripture oils. And if you're going to pick up one scripture oil to kind of help understand maybe what some of these smells would have been like, hyssop to me is one of the most beautiful smelling. It's so fresh. I can see why, it's related to cleansing. And so sometimes before worship, I actually like to wear hyssop to worship as I think about renewing my relationship with God during the Lord's Supper and that kind of thing. So just something that I do on a private level, but that may be meaningful for other people that think about those kinds of things as well.
I remember I put on hyssop when I went to the Temple Mount, and I still have the bottle, and I've been putting it on before the Lord's Supper as kind of like a sensory, almost to kind of quiet my mind and help me focus on something, grounding. So it is if you like the smell of like rosemary and lavender, it's a similar smell to that.
Interesting. Very nice. Well, this concludes this day, third day of our trip. And we appreciate you watching the program or listening to it. And listening to it on a podcast, you'll lose some of the obviously the pictures, but we hope that there still is benefit for you as well. And so we will end this program, and then the next program that we're going to do the next day was in Jerusalem, particularly focusing on Jesus in Jerusalem. So good night, ladies.
Good night.
Good night.